Hey everyone, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining me from. My name is Barton Seaver, chef, author, husband, father of two wonderful little boys, resident of the jagged, ragged, delicious coast of Maine, from where I am joining you today. I hope that wherever today finds you is an incredible place and that you are safe and comfortable and happy and warm and fed and secure and sanitized and sane, all of those things these days. Anyway, welcome to Office Hours. My focus is on seafood and general food cookery. My history comes up through restaurants of all sorts, and then took a turn into environmental sustainability and public health. So there's a lot on the table if you want to ask questions of. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this today. We got a bunch of good questions already. I see some familiar names and friends already queued up there. And those of you who have joined before know that I like to start off every one of these sessions that we do every other week, every 3 weeks or so, with just sharing something that I'm grateful for. Ultimately, why we are gathered here in this conversation is because we love food, or that we use food in some very important ways in our life. And there isn't much that's more important than food, and especially in these times when we all need a little bit of help. The act of feeding someone is an act of love. It is an act of kindness. And so starting off any conversation, or, well, even just process of cooking, by stating something that we are grateful for makes the whole thing more delicious, It just does. It just does. Sort of like your mise en place, one of those first concepts you learn about cooking. Have all your things in order. Yeah, we'll get your heart in order too, right? Because your food's going to be better for it. So one thing that I'm grateful for, and I'm just going to share this with you because I'm kind of trying to talk my way through this too, is that I had an experience today in which for the first time in my professional career, I delivered a piece of writing that was not up to my standards because it was the best that I could do now. And I have been pouring myself into it for the last 12 days active process, and before that, in the last 30 days of interview and research and all that. Then between pandemic and exhaustion and sleep training, our wonderful little boy, God bless it, would you just sleep? Would you just sleep, Rody? That and the world around us, you know what? I just had to be honest that this was just as far as I could get it, and I delivered it, and I asked for help. And so the thing that I am grateful for today is you, everyone. A world of people who are willing to support each other and to help each other, and that I live in a world in which that's available to me. So that's what I'm grateful for. Oh, it's also 55 degrees here today on the coast of Maine in the first false spring. It's amazing. The crocuses are coming up. Maple sap is running. I've already got about 3 quarts of maple syrup boiled down here. I've got another 1.5 quarts probably coming tonight. Life is delicious. It is sticky sweet. Our boys are beautiful and healthy and sane and safe and sound. And yeah, life is good. Hope it is with you too. Let's dive in. And I hope that, well, maybe by talking about food, we can make it a little bit better. First up, Catherine P. Hi there, friend. Nice to have you join us. How do you prevent a bechamel sauce from splitting, and why does splitting occur? I actually don't know. And forgive me for saying it this way, but it's because it's never happened to me before. And I've also never seen it happen before. So I'm somewhat trying to answer a question that answer for a problem I didn't quite know was an issue. What I can imagine happening here is that the butter in the roux, or whatever fat you were using in the roux or thickening combination, wasn't fully integrated. And so you had some of that just sort of free floating. And in that way, it separated or never really emulsified in, never integrated. Another thing is that it is, I don't know for sure, but it could be that there was acid introduced at some point, and the milk or the dairy, the acid caused that to curdle before the thickening agent had chance to sort of perform its chemistry on it to thicken it and bind it and to sort of secure it. So I'm sorry that I can't give a very straightforward answer on that, but I'd be curious to learn more about it, whether you were using dairy or non-dairy, whether you were using a traditional roux or some other form of thickener, and what it looked like, too. I can't even imagine really what a broken bechamel would look like. Anyway, well, one other thing, actually, if you put an egg in it, which I know especially in Italian cuisine, in bechamel sauce, I know that they finish it with egg sometimes, especially in the northern regions. So it is possible that if you did that, that fat did not incorporate and or cooked too quickly and sort of stayed separate. Anyway, so those are my educated, not educated guesses. I hope that helps. Cheers. Okay. From Kari P. How do you clean stainless steel pans? Well, good question. When I dry saute, they get very brown and soaking does not help. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out what my cat is eating. When you dry saute, I have found that you are going to build up layers of browning, of residue on the pans. Very high quality pans, I have found that residue doesn't ultimately have any detriment on the performance capacity of the pan. And that, yeah, and the whole thing also strikes me as strange because stainless steel, right? It's like, well, tell me a characteristic of stainless steel. It stains. It's not. That's not the first characteristic that comes to mind, right? So part of it is looking at your pan, if it is defective in some way, shape, or form, or if it's a mix of metals in some way. The other thing is that a lot of times when people saute, they turn it on to high heat, and if you've got a saute pan that's this big, and you put it on your biggest burner. For me, I've got a 5-burner gas stove, and the center one is my jet burner. It's big, and the flame is about this big. And if the pan is only this big, guess what? It's heating all the way up the rim, all the way up the sides of the saute pan, too. There's no oil on that. There's no stirring. It's sort of an unused country in terms of that pan. And so it is going to be prone to cook to staining more because you're dealing with super hot heat that's never moderated by the presence of whatever you're sauteing. And so in that way, and this is something I suggest for all saute pans, it is to match the literal size of the flame to the pan. So even if you're sauteing on high heat, find a burner that will be relevant size to intensity that you're looking for. So that's one other aspect of it. Yeah, and I can't think of any others. I don't know too much more about metallurgy and the physics and chemistry of metals and heat interactions, but the other technique for cleaning that is sort of my last go-to is simply to boil water in it. Add maybe a little bit of salt or some other corrosive like baking soda, something that's going to get in there, and use that action of the boiling to sort of lift things out. And then the other trick is if you have any OxyClean around your house, you know what? OxyClean is very effective. Mostly just what OxyClean is it's nanoparticles, it's microparticles. Basically, it breaks the cohesive bonds in water so that it allows tinier droplets to get into smaller porous areas. That's all it does. It's not a miracle cleaning agent. It's actually a physical agent that reduces the size of the molecule that you're cleaning with. That's pretty cool, right? I clean my vinyl records with OxyClean, just a couple of drops. So that's another thing to try, but read the label before you do. All right. long answer. Sorry, the first two questions kind of stumped me a little bit and caused me to really think, but I appreciate the challenge. So this is great. Off to a great start. Thanks for your question, Craig. All right. From Davian. Hello, are there any good sources for oil-free, sugar-free dressing for vegetables and salad? Fan of yours and a friend of Paul Martino. Oh, how wonderful. Paul is wonderful. What a good neighbor he is. And what a fascinating, charismatic man, too. So, hey, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Quite honestly, I am not an expert on that because I use oil and small amounts of sugar in my cooking, so I have not investigated that much. In terms of sugar, if you're going to make your own, citrus juices, fruit juices are, lemon. Lemon is surprisingly sweet. It's just balanced by a lot of sour as well. But the presence of that sweet carries throughout whatever the vinaigrette is going to be, whatever the other components are. So that would be my substitution for sugar. It would be citrus juices, or even just diced up fresh fruit as part of the vinaigrette. I mean, take some red grapes and just brunoise them, right, in tiny little pieces like you would a shallot. You get a nice little bit of texture to it, and, well, there's your sweetness, and you're actually adding nutrition, too. So there you go for that. And oil-free, again, that's just not an expertise I have. I have made vinaigrettes, things I called vinaigrettes that were made with thickened, slurry-thickened, flavorful liquids, such as a poaching broth or herb broth, etc. So there's the world there to explore. But in terms of just market brands and availability off the shelf, I can't steer you in any one direction or the other. So, hey, thanks for joining. Appreciate it. Say hi to Paul for me. I don't see him very often, in the pandemic. So if you see him before I do, send him my regards. All right. From Deb S. Hi, friend. Nice to see you back. Been trying to come up with some dishes that combine shrimp, Granny Smith apples, and cilantro. My efforts have been less than tasty. Could you please offer suggestions or tell me that these three just don't go together? So that's an interesting, almost sort of reverse engineering of a dish that, in my mind, I start with a flavor profile that I'm looking to achieve that is contingent upon the sort of the major ingredient players in the dish. So shrimp, for example, cilantro, for example, those things inherently impact the nature of whatever the final dish is in a significant way. So I kind of tend to reverse engineer. It's like, man, I would really love a shrimp dish flavored with cilantro that has balanced sweetness, a slight acidity to it. I want some crunch. So I'd sort of reverse engineer. It's interesting that you're sort of starting with three ingredients and trying to engineer them, forward. But my first reaction to this is I'm really curious how you got those three things to not be successful and tasty. Because to my palate, that just works. It just works really well. The tartness of the Granny Smith, the texture of the Granny Smith, the pop of it, the sort of the lingering sweetness, but the initial acidity is exactly what you're looking for when you use lime juice in things, for example. Cilantro, lime juice, cilantro acidity, cilantro and sweetness go perfectly together. So that's sort of interesting. And shrimp and both of those ingredients go perfectly together. So it's sort of, I'm a little curious as to what you did that you found that resulted in something you found not tasty. What I can imagine you did is cook the Granny Smith to some degree. And I would recommend against that. Granny Smith have a lot of charisma and presence and potential as an ingredient when raw. Very finely diced brunoise or very sliced very thin. If you are going to slice them very, very thin, I would recommend removing the skin as that can be a distracting texture. The other thing that I would recommend is considering the final construction and sort of presentation of the dish as a cold dish. Shrimp are absolutely delightful when cooked and then chilled and served, room temperature or cold. So cilantro is fresh and bright. Granny Smith, I think, is better and more charismatic when raw. So what I would do there is poach your shrimp in a broth, bay leaf, coriander seeds, and a bunch of salt, maybe just a dash of acidity, some vinegar, white wine, lemon juice, lime juice, whatever. Poach the shrimp in that, and then chill them down in the poaching liquid. Cook them until they're about 3/4 of the way done, and then just turn the heat off and let them sit. That will help them absorb flavor, retain some of their own moisture, as well as cook very delicately, gently, and they'll absorb more of the flavor of the poaching liquid. And then slice them very thin. Here's your shrimp. Slice them thin on a bias lengthwise, so you get these nice sort of rainbow ribbons of shrimp. If you're using a 16-20 size shrimp, so basically thumb size, maybe cut it into 2 pieces lengthwise, maybe 3 slices, so that it has texture, it has pop, it has bite, it also has visual appearance and presence. And then just make a salad. Grab some arugula, some nice peppery arugula. Throw in a whole bunch of picked cilantro leaves and thinly shave your Granny Smith into that. Just a little bit of vinegar and olive oil, and wow, there you go. Or you could take it in a different flavor profile direction. Combine the cilantro with some fresh mint leaves, a little fish sauce, some lime juice. Go sort of Southeast Asian in terms of flavors there. Again, that sort of same raw herb salad as not just a flavoring, but really a major component of the dish. But if you are intent on eating it hot, you know what? Dice up the Granny Smith and add it at the very last minute, almost as a garnish, as you would maybe breadcrumbs on top of a pasta or something. And you should be pretty much adding your cilantro in at the very end of a cooking process anyway, to retain as much of its flavor. So just do the same with the Granny Smith. And hey, check back with me or send me an email and at Barton at Rouxbe and let me know how it goes. I'm fascinated by that, and I'd love to hear some of your earlier attempts and how those were formed. Hey, friend, nice to see you. Thanks for joining. All right, from Ed M. Hi, buddy. Hi, Chef. Do you have a recipe for a tangy yogurt that isn't slimy from oat milk? I do not. I'm sorry to say. I will pass this question along to support at Rouxbe, and they will be getting back to you with an answer on that. But I just have not delved much into the world of making my own yogurts out of non-dairy milks. So sorry I can't help, but thanks for joining. Much appreciate you. All right, from Don Y. We cooked some purple sweet potatoes in the microwave, and they came out dry. I read the purple sweet potatoes should be cooked with a moist method due to their density. What do you suggest? Yes, I as soon as I read the word purple potato there, purple sweet potato, I just had this Proustian evocation of dry mouth. Yeah, they just are dry. They feel like yucca root, cassava, in the way that they sort of sit on the palate and that they work as an ingredient. Are they delicious? Absolutely. They're incredibly healthful and nutritious. They're gorgeous. But yes, I would recommend a moist heat cooking method. So simmering them first and then roasting them would be a nice way to both sort of capture, sort of moisten the flesh, but then also get some of the crunch and the sort of caramelization of the roasting process. Grilling is a good way as well, but pre-cooking in salted boiling water is something I would recommend. Just par cooking even. You don't want to get them to the point where they're just crumbly and falling apart and then you're trying to cook them. Just a few minutes is more than enough. And alter the size and shape of your cut to maximize the likelihood of success of the cooking method that you're going to apply to it. So if you're going to be grilling them, don't cut them into super thin slices that are just going to fall apart. or likewise into long, thin bands that are not going to have any structural integrity, right? You don't grill French fries. Why? It's just not going to work. So think about the structural issues, not issues, but the structural nature of the purple sweet potato, and sort of advise your cut to the intended outcome. Much as I was just talking about with the shrimp in the past, that is one of the methods that I also like for those drier root vegetables. Purple potatoes, purple sweet potatoes, cassava, etc. Cooking it in a very flavorful court bouillon poaching liquid on moderate heat, and then turning it off before they're fully cooked and just letting them sit and letting them absorb the flavor and the moisture while staying tender. You're also not messing around with them. You're not stirring them. You're not transferring them multiple times. So you're not going to break them up much. And, I'll chop up a whole bunch of sweet potatoes I do that with and just make a big batch of them. And I've got them, in the fridge in this liquid that basically is its own vinaigrette. And I can take it out, put it on top of some brown rice out of the rice cooker, and I've got an absolutely delicious lunch that I had to think about for approximately 45 seconds in terms of its entire, production day of. Anyway, hey Don, thanks, man. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you're diving into the world of technicolored, hallucinogenic, vegetables. There, it's pretty cool what we have access to now. And yeah, cheers. All right. Hey, Charlie, I love your attitude. Well, that's a nice thing to hear, especially with 2 hearts after it and the avatar picture of a looks like a pink poodle. How awesome. Thank you. I appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate you joining us. It's nice of you to share. All right, from Joe M. Do you recommend using canisters for flour, sugar, etc., or plastic storage containers? Was thinking of freeing up some counter space. Huh. I think I think that's sort of so nuanced to your kitchen, to your aesthetic, to the rate of use flour. So in our house, we just don't use much flour at all, and therefore it sits around for quite some time. So I have a vested interest in preserving it by preventing air contact with it. I also have a 4.5-year-old boy and an 8-month-old boy. So bags of flour are a problem. They're just a problem. Wherever they are, they're a problem. So we invested in some very nice ceramic containers with a nice rubber sealing, mostly sealing rubber gasket on the inside. And I store those because if something's going to sit around for a long time, it might as well be nice to look at, right? Yeah. I also prefer that just because digging into the bag constantly, you're always going to get some flour stuck in some little crevice or fold or whatever, and it's never fully clean. But in terms of canisters, glass, plastic, etc., again, that's up to your aesthetic. Again, think about sort of the purpose. Am I just holding it for 2 weeks while I race through it because I bake bread every other day? Well, then, yeah, just go with whatever is most functional for you, right? And easiest use. And something that you can store next to the kitchen mixer, wherever it is you do your bread. In terms of safety of plastics, there's plenty of BPA-free plastics now that are advertised as such and quite easy to find, and a huge range of styles and sizes and all that. So, again, sort of up to you. You can see, if you look behind me, I've got a whole host of different aesthetics and all sorts of stuff, from antiques to functional things to non-functional things. So anyway, interesting questions today. Hey, I really appreciate this. Sorry I got distracted also because there is a bird that is not a chicken in my chicken's run right now. And I'm just curious. Yeah. Life on a farm in Maine. There you go. In spring, things are hungry. Okay, moving on. Hi, everyone. Welcome back, Bart. Thanks. I've been gone. Maya, nice to see you. You're an amazing chef no matter what you cook. I agree with that. Anybody who cooks for anyone else is an amazing person and is bold and brave and should be congratulated for it. Every chef should be. I agree. Since ingredients shouldn't define the chef, I agree with that. Also, have I ever considered abandoning cooking seafood and becoming a plant-based chef only? Yes, I have considered that. And have made a very educated decision to eat seafood, to eat it with restraint, to eat it with care, to eat it mindfully, to eat it with joy, that we can continue to participate from a sustainability vantage point, that we can continue to participate in the bounty of our lakes, rivers, ponds, and oceans. From a health perspective, it is important in the way that we view diet, and also culturally. It's incredibly important to me. It is what I based my career on. And it's not important just because of momentum. It's important because I based my career on something that I truly do love and am connected to through myriad ritualized moments in my life, from fishing with my dad and all sorts of experiences and explorations of our natural world, to the very house I live in that was built by a fisherman here in Maine, and I still live amongst fishermen and right next door to them. And so, to me, the choice to continue eating seafood is a very purposeful and processed decision. I do not eat much meat at all. I will eat meat from good sources as entertainment. I don't seek it out as sustenance. So if there's a charcuterie plate with some truly incredible artisan, just work of art, prosciutto or chorizo or something that somebody has put 2 years of their time into or more in a loving way that's generations old craftspersonship, yeah, I will eat that. I will appreciate that for what it is. Am I, sustaining myself on hamburgers and steaks and pork chop? No. Quite honestly, I find that a little bit boring. It's just never really excited me. And from an environmental standpoint, you know what? I have no problem with properly and responsibly raised meat, land animal meat. In fact, it's a vital and necessary part of many models of sustainable agriculture. In that way, if I tell a farmer that I want them and appreciate them doing things sustainably, well, one of the ways to do that is, in fact, by incorporating animals on the farm. So I do believe it has a place in our diet. It certainly should not occupy the vaunted and monolithic place that it does in the American diet and increasingly the world. So sort of talking you through my entire thought process on this, but the other reason why I don't eat much meat is simply because of my sons. I want them to live in a world that has less stress and strife and conflict than it seems it might if we keep going on the way and the path that we are with our diet and travel and all of our human activities that are leading to climate change. So animal agriculture being large-scale animal agriculture being a significant contributor to that. So that is my decision process all the way around. But the bottom line of all of that is, yeah, I pretty much eat mostly vegetables. And in fact, my restaurants, 15 years ago, I was running restaurants and founded my cuisine on vegetables with small portions of protein on top. Why? Because the vegetables are what's interesting. In America, we write menus. If you go into any restaurant menu, what's in boldface, font, 12-point font size, it's Atlantic salmon. And then in 8-point font, regular typeface, it's, blah, 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 blah. Whatever else comes with it. It's like, yeah, but that's the stuff that makes eating fun, right? I can get salmon anywhere and just cook it, whatever. That's not what's special. So I really focused on the pairings. And so my cuisine has always been really vegetable oriented. to a significant degree, and this is evidenced in all of my cookbooks, but in my first cookbook for Cod and Country, I even wrote in the first line of that book is, if you want to save the oceans, great, eat more broccoli. So there's a lot of channel markers pointing us towards a veg-based diet. I appreciate your journey along that. Thank you for allowing me and being patient with a somewhat meandering answer, but those are all important points and things that I've thought about deeply in my life, and I'm glad to share them with you. And I hope that, anyway. All right, friends. Oh, it's my friend Judith coming up next. Hello. It's nice to see you. It just makes me smile that you join us. Thank you. And it makes me smile, I read this last night, that you have 3 new grandchildren. That's incredible. And I can only imagine that with pandemic and just the ways of the world that there's likely an incredibly sweet coming together in the future if it hasn't happened already. And congratulations to you. What a wonderful thing. Children are a brightness, and I cherish their light. So wonderful for you. And you're asking about seafood. So my 2 favorite things, seafood and kids. There you go. So your question specifically is, what age did Alden begin eating fish? So Alden's my 4.5-year-old. And any tips for getting kids to love seafood? Well, first, Judith, you likely know this. You've joined us many times before, as I mentioned. But seafood as part of a diet is particularly important for children, for pregnant and nursing mothers. It's neurodevelopmental benefits that we gain from a diet rich in omega-3 fatty acids, as are best delivered to us through fatty seafood such as salmon, mackerel, sardines, anchovies, etc. The impact that including omega-3s and seafood in the diet of children, the impact that it has is incredible. I've read studies that point to an overall increase in IQ of, on average, about 7 points in populations where seafood is a particularly strong part of their diet. Yes, there are, of course, concerns about environmental toxins in seafoods, but the vast majority of the really great for you to eat seafoods with omega-3s are in fact negligible or on the very low side of that toxicity level. So it helps with mood balancing. It helps prevent diabetes. It helps us to moderate our weight. It sets us up for just a life of prime health. So introducing seafood early is not only important in the acute sense, but you are literally creating, helping a person to become better fit to engage with the world. So, yeah, congratulations to you. And thanks for the opportunity just to talk about the importance of seafood in the diets of those populations. But in terms of how you get it actually in their mouth, Judith, like everything else, it's how you present it. If seafood is the outlier, and hey, this thing that I'm trying to get you to try, and I know that you can taste my trepidation. Much as I said at the outset, if you get your heart right before you start cooking, guess what? Your food's going to taste better. If you're nervous and anxious about your cooking before you start cooking, guess what? It's going to show. And I mean, maybe this is a little bit of the spell of the sensuous animism here that I'm spouting, but, don't make it a thing. Just make it dinner. And in our house, well, it's dinner all the time, and it's lunch, and it's often part of breakfast, and we go fish for it. And you want fish? Great. Go ask Paul. He just came off the boat. It's like he was out dragging scallops today. It's like, so there's a rich culture around it here. There's literally pictures of seafood. We have books open constantly. I get seafood related, magazines, etc. I clip out seafood recipes. So there's just this literally sort of comfort level that is created by just the normalcy and the ever presence of it. In terms of all of the things that we sort of ick at around seafood, or that we think children are going to respond to negatively, we induce all of those things. We teach them all of those ideas. There's nothing inherently disgusting about blue cheese. There's nothing inherently disgusting about strongly flavored foods. We learn through culture and through the experience we have of watching others a lot of our perceptions of food. In our house, seafood, man, it's what's for dinner. Cool. It's just that consistency. It's the talking about it, not in a hopeful, expectant way, but just like, oh man, I went to the fish market today, and that's the coolest place I've ever been. And you know what? All the floors were kind of wet because they keep everything cold and on ice. So I walked into a store, and there were puddles on the floor. How silly is that? Oh my God. And now all of a sudden we're rolling on the floor laughing about the stupid store that has puddles on the ground. What? Oh, the fish? Man, that's the last thing on his mind. That is already filed away into the accepted, category. Like, introduce it through some context, something that they're going to respond to. And Alden's favorite fish is bluefish, which if you ask the vast majority of seafood consumers, what's the worst fish? They're going, bluefish. It's the strongest fish. His second favorite is just a tin of sardines that he will just eat with a fork. That's just the way we've set him up. I sent him into daycare one day with a tin of sardines, and his daycare provider, the woman who we just adore, who's taking care of him, didn't know how it worked. She's a very smart woman, but she had never eaten a sardine in her life. The concept of sending a child to school or daycare with a can of sardines that you just eat out of the can was so foreign to her that Alden came home and was like, am I being weird? Just like, he absorbed all of that. So that idea of normalizing foods, and this is true of, I'm sorry to be going on around seafood on this, but it's true of introducing plant-based diets into a mixed dietary household. It's the same thing if you get married to a person from a radically different culture who has different holidays and different ideas of what turkey should taste like and on what day we should eat it, right? It's all about normalizing this stuff, and it's about integrating. So those are my suggestions. Kids' books. Just talk about fish. Talk about seafood. Talk about dinner. Talk about where it comes from. Make it cool, because you're cool, and they will want to follow in your footsteps. All right, Judith. Long answer, but something I'm rather passionate about and fun to talk about. All right, from Laura P. Hi, friend. Nice to see you back. Is there a rule of thumb according to which we should use a cooking method rather than another for vegetables? In other words, what kind of vegetables are best suited for what kind of cooking methods? Can you give some examples? So that is a very well-formulated question that basically, in very elegant form, is asking to explain the entire kingdom of vegetables and cookery, which is which is bold, and it's awesome, and I love it. Thank you for the question. I don't think it's so easy to break them down necessarily into very neat and tight categories, so much as it would be to ask you to sort of engage and to teach yourself a learning process about vegetables. And this is true for anything that you cook, whether it's seafood or chicken, etc. It's about paying attention to the ingredient in front of you, not just to the recipe, but to the ingredient. Cauliflower and broccoli fit into the same category, right? Because they're the same thing for most intents and purposes, right? Yes, but broccoli also has multiple forms: thin stalks, broad stalks, leathery stalks, starchy stalks, small florets, big, broad, open florets that have a lot of water penetration and cook very quickly, etc. you also have such variation in the quality of produce, meaning, the broccoli that I picked a half hour ago before I started cooking dinner still has so much moisture in it that I can just put it onto the grill dry and it will cook because there's enough in it to make that process work. Broccoli off of the sale rack that's yellowing at the traditional grocery store, don't grill it. Don't. It's just not going to work. You can't soften leather with dry heat cooking. So, Laura, what I'm trying to suggest here is like set up or sort of recognize what are the quality parameters, what are the characteristics of the vegetable in front of you, not the category of vegetable, but the vegetable in front of you, and through that begin to develop an intuitive database. Or an intuitive approach to looking at whatever comes your way and saying, okay, I got that. And that's sort of the teacher, help you learn, help you teach yourself answer. Again, the vegetable category is so broad and diverse, and there's so many different applications even within a single species that it's hard to say categories. So, like a potato. You can boil a potato, you can roast a potato, you can fry a potato, you can grill a potato, you can eat a potato raw. So in that way, I'm not sure that there's much really reward to be gained about trying to create those categories. So, you're looking at the pliability, the general moisture content, the structure of it. As I mentioned with the broccoli, is it broccoli rabe, which is just big leafy greens that have a lot of surface area and not a lot of density? Okay, well, those are going to cook a lot differently than a very tightly compacted head of cauliflower, right? So looking at just the structural aspects of it and how that structure is going to engage with the cooking method. If you have something that's very small and dense, such as carrot rounds, you can saute them, yes, but you're trying to force a lot of heat through a very small amount of surface area that's actually touching the pan in order to cook something that's very dense all the way up. That's not going to work. Take a carrot and slice it lengthwise into a nice thin strip, into these beautiful little ribbons of it, saute that. Yes, you've got a chance. You're going to be able to get that heat penetration while accomplishing the goal of the cooking method, sauteing, caramelizing, adding flavor, richness, depth, nuttiness, right? So, again, in sum, it's sort of look at the vegetable to tell you what category it should be in, not classify it before necessarily it gets to you. Cool. Okay. Thank you. That was a fun question. Lori, hi there. I am curious about the increased price of vanilla bean and if you have a substitution you'd recommend. Yes. So vanilla beans go up in price for various reasons. They come from relatively few areas. Polynesia, Southeast Asia, a few countries there, as well as Mexico. And those are different vanilla species. And those plantations, those vanilla plantations, tend to be very rural in already, in countries where there is not the same cold chain infrastructure as we have in this country. So there's a lot of supply chain logistics that I understand with vanilla beans. They're also subject to civil wars. They're subject to typhoons, which I know in the past 5 or so years, I believe, a very strong typhoon ripped through Southeast Asia region and destroyed a lot of that year's crop. And vanilla spiked up to over $100. It was $200 a pound or something like that for fresh beans. So there's a lot of factors that can play into these relatively small supply chains. Yeah, plus it's also just subject to global market whims and weirdnesses and whatever, and shipping issues and backups at ports, etc., and trade tariffs and embargoes, whatever. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that affect it, and I've kind of seen a lot of those happen. In terms of substitutions, you've asked about vanilla bean, so I'm assuming that you are utilizing it in recipes in the whole form, scraping it, toasting it, roasting it, whatever it is, infusing it. Of course, the substitute is imitation vanilla extract to add that flavor. If you are so keen to have that in your food that's acceptable to you, I don't find anything wrong with that. I don't find it to be a graceful ingredient. Just the way I don't find liquid smoke to be a good ingredient. Does it taste like smoke? Yeah, it tastes like smoke. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Does vanilla extract taste like vanilla? Yep. The really good stuff, the pure stuff, woo, yeah, that's worth using. But the stuff you get at Walgreens probably, it doesn't have a place in my kitchen. In terms of substitutions, what you're adding with vanilla bean is soaring aroma. This very svelte, very elegant, nuanced, and somewhat shy personality to your food. Vanilla used right doesn't make things taste like vanilla, the same way that smoked food shouldn't taste like only smoke. They should be the food augmented by the flavor of smoke. So, in that way, you're looking for just that subtle nuance. What's going to be that thing that picks up the integrated flavors of the dish at the end? Vanilla does a really great job of that. Almond extract does a really great job of that. Almond or nut oils, if the recipe can so include. If I'm baking a cake or something that calls for vanilla bean and I don't have it, I will add some pistachio oil, that I use for salad dressings. And just a little bit of that, or walnut oil, adds that same sort of, hey, what is that beguiling allure to it? Other things that I would recommend that I just happen to have here, liqueurs. So vanilla extract is liquor that's been infused, a neutral grain spirit usually. But drinking spirits, so things you make martinis out of, and Sazerac. So this is Herbsant. Herbsant is the famous New Orleans cocktail that it's an essential part of the Sazerac cocktail, but it's an anise fennel liqueur that is highly potent. It's much like Pernod, which I also use in the same ways. Just a few drops of that can add that same personality. It's not a direct match in terms of flavor. Bourbon, however, does add a lot of vanillin flavor, and the reason for that is that vanillin, which is a polyphenolic compound, is found in vanilla beans. It's also found in oak, and they age. To be bourbon, you have to age it in oak barrels for a long time, and so it picks up that vanillin richness in the same way that overly oaked Chardonnays have that vanillin in them. So a couple of drops of good quality bourbon added at the end of something can also add that actual vanilla flavor to it. And then the other thing that I would recommend is cocktail bitters. I started using this a little while ago in food because I was making a cocktail once and I was like, wow. I was making an old fashioned or whatever it was, and I sipped it and I was like, oh, what? Oh, I didn't put the bitters in. Right. And I added 2 drops of liquid to it and it was like magical elixir, beautiful, boiled, double and trouble, and just everything was wonderful. And it was like, whoa, like the power of this. If it can do that to a glass of very highly flavored booze, what could it do to a butternut squash soup? Right? I mean, it's bitter, which is bitter and aromatic, which is really highly desirable qualities to integrate into your food, right? So, hey, I tried doing that. So I use Peychaud's bitters, but Angostura as well. So again, a lot to unpack in your question, but hey, thanks. And Patrick just posted Fran's, my colleague Fran's, masterclass on vanilla. All right. So we've got a lot more questions to go and a little bit of time. I'm sorry that I'm giving lengthy answers. I'll try and speed up a little bit here. And talk to Myrna, who calls herself a fool who's cooking for my own wedding. Oh, no, that's not a fool. You love the people that you are inviting to your wedding, and it's a show of love. Question is, how long can I keep shellfish in the fridge before cooking? I want to pick up the day before from very good fishmongers. Will this work? Absolutely. Yes. If you're buying fresh shellfish from a reputable, good source that you know, high-quality shellfish has 7 days of shelf life if you store it properly. Whether you're talking about mussels, oysters, clams, bivalves, or whether you're talking about shrimp, whatever. Store it in the refrigerator covered with a moist paper towel. Make sure that there's no liquid on it or that it's sitting in any liquid of its own exudation or of ice melt water, etc. The refrigerator is cold enough. You don't need to put them on ice, but you do need to protect them from air and keep them moist. And they'll be with you all the way through your wedding, and they will last. Congratulations on your wedding. Getting married is the best thing I ever did, and hope the same for you. Enjoy. I hope it's a delicious day. All right, Don. Hey again. I purchased white miso paste for the first time recently. I store in the fridge as recommended. I noticed after about 2 weeks started turning light brown. Is that normal? The expiration date not till November 2022. So I have experienced the exact same, and that is just simple oxidation. White miso is in fact, off-white. It is brown, and as the edges of it or whatever is exposed or has been exposed to air oxidizes, dehydrates, it is going to, the intensity of the color is obviously going to increase. So that is all you're seeing in that, I believe. I wouldn't say that's any sign of mold or deterioration, just dehydration. And if you're mixing it into a broth or a soup or a vinaigrette, sure, you can shave off any dry areas of it just to avoid any potential difference in textures of it not integrating. But I've never had a problem using that, those little areas that are more exposed than the rest of it that I'm storing. So, but good of you to ask, and good of you to notice too. Hi, Paulette. Having trouble finding dark miso. Do I have to find an Asian market to purchase? Depends on where you are, of course, and what constituencies and what cultures, whatever grocery store you frequent, whatever constituency they also serve and that they expect to be in their stores. Grocery stores won't just have everything if the people whose major culture it is that consumes that don't come in. So again, it depends on where you are. In my neck of the woods up here in Maine, oddly enough, we can get a lot of Asian ingredients very easily, readily at many of the large sort of chain grocery stores up here. But, honestly, I would recommend going to an Asian market anyway, because you're going to come home with a lot of other super cool things, most of which you're not going to have any idea what they are. Or at least for me, because I'm not able to read Asian alphabet words, any of the Eastern languages. So, yeah. I mean, hey, you might come home with a couple different kinds of dark miso, and you're probably going to have a great conversation with the shop owner, who probably has a lot to tell you about it and wants to share it with you. And hey, what a great conversation to strike up and learn from, right? And it's fun. And this is all, of course, in the outside of the COVID bubble I'm speaking of here. But if you're still having trouble finding it, certainly online sources can get it to you quite easily. Everything is available everywhere these days. All right. Hi from Olga. All right. Thank you for joining. Which wine can be the one that enhanced the most when you cooked mushrooms? Thank you. That enhances the most. I'm assuming that you enhances the mushrooms the most. I'm going to say I really like Merlot, Syrah, Grenache. Red wines that are in the middle of the spectrum in terms of body and tannin. Also in the middle of the spectrum in terms of sweetness, and I'm not talking sugariness, but just ebullience, but that are also sort of moderate acid. Really high acid wines like Dolcetto, Pinot Noir, some Pinot Noirs, can end up being kind of astringent after you reduce it. Because when you cook wine, all you're doing is taking the original qualities of the wine and augmenting them and just amplifying them. You don't cook wine to make it better. You just make it more winey, make it more of what it was to start with. So that middle of the road provides a platform. Those middle of the road red wines provides a great platform for the flavors of the mushroom. Those wines all tend to have somewhat of an earthy aspect of their personality, at least something in the background that sort of lends them to be friendly with earthy flavored ingredients like mushrooms. But as always with cooking with wine, cook with the wine that you're drinking, not out of some weird pairing thing, rule, but just cook with wine that's good enough for you to drink, and cook with wine that's fresh, because, well, you're also drinking it, so it's not just sitting around. And just make it part of the process. So have a glass of wine and enjoy. That's going to be the wine that enhances the cooking process the best. Thank you. All right, from Sonia. Hi, Barton. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. First off, I love the coast of Maine. Yes, it is. Well, it is. Though the rest of humanity may be yet east of Eden, we remain here in Maine, and I'm okay with that. It is wonderful. What are your thoughts about Dutch ovens? I do feel like they should be part of the cookware repertoire. I find them enormously helpful. They perform so many different variations of function in that the density of the metal, the ceramic, and its ability to radiate heat back through. You can use lower heat over a longer period of time because of the way that they conduct the heat very evenly. When you put the top on, a lot of Dutch ovens now are coming with little indentures or little nipples sort of cast into the bottom of the top, so that there is a pathway for evaporated moisture to then find its condensate and find its way back into the food. So you're sort of self-basting to roast a chicken or steam some bread to get the browning on it. That's very hard to do in an otherwise traditional oven. I find them incredibly versatile and valuable. And you know what? I have a lot of them because I've written a lot of cookbooks. We've done a lot of TV shows. We need a lot of props. I have way more than is reasonable for the average home kitchen. But I have also not relegated my Dutch ovens to specific uses. Like, I'll use that only when I make chilies or stews or soups or slow cook things. Like, actually, no, just last night I took out the Dutch oven and used it to saute up some zucchini. Why? Because it works really great for that. That's why. To me, it's a very versatile, it's a very good investment. They also last. If you take care of them, meaning don't drop them, apply the appropriate heat to them, don't get them raging hot and then throw a bucket of ice water in them. Don't put it in the dish sink when it's super hot, and just be mindful of it. Don't treat it in ways that you want to be treated, right? And guess what? I mean, you'll probably be giving it away as an inheritance to somebody if you take care of it. So ultimately, they're worth the money. All right, great question. Thank you. Hey, Catherine, enjoy seared scallops with red oil served with maple cream orzo and chorizo. Whoa. Wow. That's a something and a half. Cool. What other plating sides do you like with scallops? Wow. Those are big, bold flavors you got there. Red oil, I'm assuming, is like a chili oil. Maple cream orzo. So you've got richness in there from the chorizo and the spice, from the oil and the chorizo, and the richness and sweetness from the orzo. And wow, that's a great dish. Nice components. I really like scallops actually in the very opposite sort of spectrum of dish structure. I'll sear the scallops. I'll leave them in the pan, cook them 75% of the way up on one side, and then I will flip them over, turn the heat off, and just let the residual heat in the pan finish cooking them. And in that time, I will be preparing like a citrus salad, citrus segments or supremes, fennel. Green olives is a great combination with scallops. That richness, that sweetness, that umami-rich punch of salt fragrance, sea glory that is the scallop. They do very well with that silken texture when paired with something crunchy like fresh sliced fennel, sliced red onion, or shallot, fresh herbs like cilantro, mint, parsley mixed together. And I don't feel that scallops need to always be served hot. Certainly, a nice plate of scallops served steaming, piping hot right out of the pan is great. You need something like a maple cream orzo underneath to maintain that heat from bite one to last bite. So if you are serving hot, sort of go heavy or go at least dense in terms of the paired ingredients or components. But there you go. I've said my piece about scallops. They're delicious. Thanks for joining. Hi, Lori. On a whim, I ordered some on mirin for my plant-based cooking, but I have no idea how to use it. Can it be used in marinades, sauces, and to glaze, just like wine? I actually don't know what han mirin is. I know what aji mirin is. So aji mirin, I have multiple versions of aji mirin around. It's basically a sweet rice cooking wine. It kind of behaves in the way that sherry cooking wine behaves. It adds that sweetness, but a little bit of tang to it at the end. I've seen aji mirins that have alcohol content. So this is the Kikkoman. This has 8% alcohol by volume, which is funny. Like, tell a high schooler that, hey, you could go buy this, off the shelf. 8%, twice the alcohol content of beer. So that alcohol needs to cook off if you're using it anyway, or I guess just be aware that alcohol can linger in a flavor if you're using it in a dressing or something like that. It's not a bad thing, but you just need to be aware that it will alter the nature of the integration of the flavors. Certainly for marinades is a big way that I use it. I usually use it as a additive instead of adding sugar to something like a tomato sauce. I'll add some mirin. Now, this mirin does actually have sugar in it. In fact, the first ingredient is glycose syrup. So I'm basically just adding flavored sugar. But high quality mirins, fermented wines that are truly artisan craft products are worth seeking out. And yeah, I use them basically in any which way you can think to use them. So, hey, thanks for the question. Blair, hi, buddy. I have a friend who told me that tofu produces estrogen, and as a man, I should probably stay away from it. Any comments for or against tofu? I don't know enough to wade into that one. I have heard the same thing, that soy can promote the production of estrogen in males. I don't know to what degree or to what potential outcome, whether I won't even say detrimental outcome or not. I don't even know what the outcome is to judge it one way or the other. So yeah, I'm sorry, I can't tell you on that one, but yeah. Certainly I'm sure the research is out there. Just find a reasonable site on that one, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of conspiracy theories that come up pretty quick with that. All right, Blair, I'm sorry I can't give you a direct answer on that, but tofu is delicious and it's fun to cook and it's great to eat. So if nothing else, there's that. Rachel, how do you suggest handling giving credit for recipes, particularly online, but also in print? Only if you follow it exactly, is the question. What about when you're just inspired by make it your own? So technically, if you were to open up one of my cookbooks and take a recipe with 10 ingredients in it, and change one of those ingredients from, say, a tablespoon to a half tablespoon, the recipe is now yours, legally and technically. And I've run up against this with some times that happened to me, but also sort of wondering, like, yeah, okay, but who owns the, like, there are things that are in the public domain that, just maybe, like, how do you give credit to something that is so ubiquitous or part of culture? So in terms of technicalities, I think that's almost beside the point. I think it's really more about ethics and respect and appreciation. Inspired by, you know what? If you really want to point out that person or that work from which you drew your inspiration, you want to call them out, give them credit, turn attention towards them for whatever reason. Yeah, absolutely. Just say, hey, this is inspired by, and there could be any host of reasons for that. But also, I don't find that there's any ethical shortcoming of not mentioning an inspiration. The bottom line is we all live in a world of so much information and so many things coming at us, and quite honestly, no one has cooked anything new or unique in 10,000 years. I mean, it's just like every dish has been cooked before, eaten before by someone somewhere. Every combination. So, in that way, I would just say, be respectful. When it is someone's livelihood, they are selling that recipe. Hey, see it as your opportunity to support them. Certainly calling out photo credits, I think is important. If you don't take the photo, then if you're using somebody else's photo, that is a protected asset. But also, it's just goodwill within the community. And hey, if you're reading a cookbook and you're inspired by it, and hey, you just mentioned it on your social feed, and hey, that really famous big author is like, whoa, great job, cool, you're awesome. Right, pat on the back for you. That's fun. Yeah, it is a bit of a vague area though, because I can't claim, hey, I ate a hot dog with ketchup. That's my recipe. At some point you just gotta say it's in the public domain. All right, there you go. Interesting questions today. This is great. Thank you, friends. I needed something. I needed these. I needed you. I appreciate you all. Hi, Adam. Why does the Forks Over Knives not endorse using oil, salad dressings, fried tofu, bread, oil, all that? I'm going to refer that question back to the Forks Over Knives and the Sport Ruby team. I can hazard an answer, but as it is so central to their philosophy and cuisine, I will leave it to them to best describe it to you. So expect to hear from somebody very soon on that. Blair, yes, you lived with tofu too. Thanks. Yeah, it sucks to have the things you love all of a sudden be called into question, right? It's like, anyway, but we endure. All right, from Chris. Hey, friend, nice to see you pop up again. I haven't seen you in a little while. Thanks for the tip to store the garlic in a cold environment. Yes, there we go. That was the last time we talked. Since I moved it into the garage, no more rubbery, dark garlic. There you go. And yeah, as you get later and later into the, or further and further away from the harvest of the garlic, that becomes ever more important. At this point now, I'll bring garlic in from our breezeway, our cold storage, and within 8 hours, I can tell a difference of it sparking its biological processes. So yeah, cold storage, there you go. But I'm glad that worked. This has all been worth it. Such validation. Wonderful thing. We purchased great, hey Judith, sorry, purchased great stainless steel pans, and they recommended Cook for Life stainless steel cleaner. Okay, and still you were having trouble with the staining. I'm not familiar with either with the Cook for Life stainless steel cleaner. So my answer from earlier stands, but there's also in my world, I have these really nice copper pans, Mauviel. It was a gift to myself that I saved up for several years for Christmases to get myself the whole set. They make me feel sexy, and they're stained, and I'm okay with that. And they're tarnished and patinaed, and I'm okay with that because I have a 4.5-year-old and an 8-month-old child. And the thought of me polishing my copper or putting the elbow grease into actually getting the stains out is so beyond my comprehension and capacity for envisioning a life other than the all hands on deck that life is now. Yeah, I'm just okay with it. And that's okay. And life is really wonderful. And life is more delicious because of all of you and all that you do to cook and feed others, to teach yourself to join the Rouxbe community. I really appreciate you. Please follow me on Instagram, connect with me there. Send me an email to barton@rouxbe.com, at Barton Seaver's Instagram. I got a whole bunch of books out in the world, 8 of them. Yeah, check those out. And hey, let's stay friends. Join me again at the next event when that's joining the next couple of weeks. I believe it's March 25th. We're going to have my dear friend Nadine Brown, an incredible sommelier and friend from the DC area, joining us to talk about wine. More details to follow. And hey, 10 days until spring, folks. Love it. Take care. Have a great weekend.